Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, good night, I guess, since we're doing them all, right? Good mid-afternoon.
Well, it almost feels like night over here with all that smoke,
Yeah,
right? I haven't seen the sun in 7 days. It's insane.
that sounds pretty awful. Although you should be pretty used to that being in Seattle, right?
Aha. No, no, no. That's a myth. That's a myth that we propagate to not get more people into
I heard
Seattle.
that's...
Like I came here first time, what was 2016 in the summer for already. And it was the middle of the summer, so it was July. And I came here, it was like, 79, mid 80s. I was like, these people have been lying to us all this time. It's amazing. It's stunning. I fell in love with Seattle back then. And we've been here ever since. But I have to say that this year has been particularly trying and texting and challenging.
Yeah.
Anyway, it's morning. So at least for us,
I heard that's...
hope everyone is well and safe.
I heard that's why they brought all the interns in the summer to Seattle, so they'll stay. I mean, we honeymooned in Seattle, in Canada, and see, we got married in the middle of the summer, so it was about 95 here at home, and it was like 72 and breezy in Seattle, and like 65 in Canada. And here are these here are these two enormous Americans and their giant, enormous Ford Mustang driving around Victoria.
Oh, you got a Mustang. Nice.
That was what the rental place gave us. We didn't ask for it. It was that or a Volvo wagon, and I was like, "Well, I want the Volvo wagon," and they said no. So I was like, "All right." Well.
Oh, hell no! Hell no, man.
So, a couple of things this week. We've got one of our MVPs on today who's going to go deep into EazyAuth and the cool things we can do with that, which is a great migration tool and a great, especially for older apps and great for new apps too. We're going to get into this Thursday. We're going to have some people on from our docs team to talk about how they build docs and why they build docs and how they determine what kinds of docs to build and just everything that goes into docs.
Their minds. What's going in their minds?
Yep. And then next week is Ignite Week, right? So next week I think we're gonna try to have a few special shows next week and maybe do some maybe highlight some of the cool things coming out of Ignite, and maybe we'll offer some commentary because of course that's what the internet needs is more people's opinions. So we'll go and talk.
Ignite extravaganza. That's what we're calling it. There will be some surprises, and now that we committed online, then we have to do it. So there will be. So we'll try to post them on our calendar so you guys can see them, and just so you know when to tune in and what to watch. But we'll do our best.
Ignite doesn't feel like I mean, it's kind of weird. Like last time I was in Ignite was a long time ago, which was in like Chicago, I guess. And
right.
I mean, it was cool. Don't get me wrong. It was just really busy, and I don't know. I think next week will be pretty cool. We got some good identity sessions coming up, and there'll be some interesting announcements. And so, yeah, next week we'll have a cool fleet of shows. Maybe stream a little bit more next week to talk about all the goings on.
Yeah.
So,
yeah, we'll probably be more online.
Yeah.
Next week.
Yeah.
So you're gonna get more of us. I don't know if that's a good thing or a bad thing.
Guess it depends on
we
what
would
you
love to
ask.
have you online with us.
So, Mr. Matskis, what are we doing today?
Well, today we have a fantastic MVP coming all the way from Europe to talk to us about EazyAuth and app service. So I'm not going to steal his thunder. Jan, I'm going to let you introduce the subject and tell us what you're building, what you're making today. And we're in your hands. Go for it.
Cool. Thank you for having me. So, hi everyone. We're going to go a little bit deeper today into EazyAuth, which is a feature or functionality of Azure App Service and Azure Functions as well. It's a function or feature which allows you to easily set up authentication for existing apps and also new apps and modern apps as well. And you can do some magic with it. And throughout today, I'll also show you how to run it locally, how to use it in your code to actually make it locally debuggable, and I'll probably also show you how to make and connect it with other services like Logic Apps, which is actually enables a lot of funny scenarios. So let's probably get into it, and I'll start with creating a brand new app service. So we'll create a new website in Azure Portal. I hope that everyone's familiar with it. So I'll just go ahead and create an EasyAuth site. So here's a cool thing about EasyAuth. In the past, EasyAuth was available only for app service on Windows, so you had to have an Windows instance. Nowadays, you can go with Linux instance as well. So, and I'll later on how it works. So for this demo, I will choose a PHP because EasyAuth works with any language, and I'm also fond of PHP besides .NET. We have some cool .NET demos as well. I will choose Windows.
Wait a minute. Did you say PHP?
PHP, yeah.
All right, that's the end of the show. Thanks, guys.
So one question though. So for those who aren't familiar, so EasyAuth is app service. That's sort of our primary PaaS platform in Azure, right? And so
yeah.
What does that mean for me as a developer? What does that give me, right?
Right. So in the past, or regularly, you would go ahead, set up your virtual machine, set up some web server on it, and push your code to it. Then you would manage all the operating system updates, runtime updates, and so on. But with app service, you actually get all of that for you. You get a website which contains a bunch of runtimes. You can see that I have .NET Core, I have ASP.NET, which is the classic .NET framework. I have Java in multiple versions. I can run Node apps. I can run PHP, Python, Ruby. And if that's not enough for me, I can also bring my own Docker container, may it be Windows or Linux one. So it's basically, like you said, it's a PaaS, platform as a service offering, where basically you just write the code and Azure takes care of everything else.
Very nice, cool, and it's relatively inexpensive too, right?
It's quite cheap. Yeah. The cool thing is that you basically don't have the management on your hands. Yeah. So it does a lot of things for you. Also auto scale or scaling in general, so you can scale into multiple instances, which I'm very fond of for projects, because it can save you a lot of money.
Should we say how many instances, depending on the tier?
It depends on the tier. I believe that you can scale up to 50 instances with the premium or isolated plans. Not 100% sure about it.
Damn, I thought it was 20. Did we add more?
It used to be 20.
Let's check it here. So if I go with isolated, I can go up to 100 actually.
Oh, wow.
Nice.
Check that out. Who needs containers, right?
Yeah.
Come to the app service and scale up.
Yeah, but you see, it's also for a certain cost on the isolated plans. But I think you were with the regular instances you can go up to 20. So
nothing against containers, but if you have the ability to scale to 100 instances and you don't have the overhead of managing Kubernetes or containers, then I think that's a win-win situation.
So speaking of Kubernetes, I'll just put on a little picture if I can find it, because I had a talk on app service on Linux, which actually lets you, or app service on containers, which lets you run web apps and containers. And basically the annotation was, I just deployed my blog to Kubernetes. So you wouldn't use app service for running microservices, like large scale microservices, but if you need to run a website or you're migrating to cloud, it's a perfect choice. And I think this is actually from Twitter, so just to make sure to attribute it correctly.
To someone on Twitter. Nice.
Yeah, someone on Twitter. I don't have the link, I'm sorry. But if you're watching and you reach out to me, I'll be glad to annotate it properly. All right, so I'll just create the app service. I'll just make it very close to me in West Europe, and I'll use my existing app service plan. So I'm running on the premium V2 plan. Just for this demo, I'll disable the app insights because we don't need monitoring. I'll get up and running.
Wait a minute.
Yeah.
You say you don't need monitoring?
for the demo. I don't need it.
Could you
Easy production. Just make sure.
could you zoom your browser?
Maybe
zoom your browser 2 taps.
Absolutely.
Yes.
Absolutely.
There you go.
Okay, good.
Okay.
Perfect.
It's
It
not
was a
too
little
big.
tiny.
App Insights is actually very cool, and it also works in combination with EazyAuth. So you can basically push the identity of the user to App Insights, so that you can trace the request to the specific user. And one of the options to take the identity is in ASP.NET. It's from the claims identity. And I'll be showing that a little bit later, how to work with EazyAuth and claims identity in ASP.NET, but you can connect it and it will work just very nicely together.
Very nice.
So we got a site here. Let's just imagine that I have some super secret thing here. It's just saying, okay, I just deployed an app service. And the thing is, we probably don't want this to be internet-facing site, right? If it's something secret or we're just staging some new website or project, we want to have only authenticated set of users to have access to it. So
Right.
I have two options. I can either go and start writing my code and modify the existing application, or if it's a single page apps, add some sort of MSOL for JavaScript and implement it into the code. Or I can go here into the portal, into authentication and authorization. Maybe one more step back. We say here EazyAuth, but in Azure portal, it's called authentication authorization. And from within the documentation, and I'll probably show that as well in a bit, it's also referred to as EazyAuth. So keep that in mind. It has multiple names, and probably more references will be as EazyAuth.
JP, do you have music in the
Yeah,
background?
we did. Well, we don't now, but yeah, we did. Oops.
People don't like our music. Apparently, our
Right.
taste in music is not good, or maybe it was too loud. I don't know.
Yep.
Quick question. Yeah, so it used to be EazyAuth in the portal as well, right? Before we rebranded it to Authentication and Authorization, correct?
I'm not 100% sure, because in the very old Azure portal, when it was the Azure Service Management, it was just authentication authorization there.
Right.
Maybe in the APIs. And before it was authentication authorization, it was actually part of Azure mobile apps. So it basically allowed you, using the SDK and .NET or Node and the client-side SDK, it allowed you to basically streamline and simplify authentication for mobile apps using this identity service. But Microsoft sort of deprecated the Azure mobile apps and basically moved everything to app service. So
Azure mobile apps.
Yeah.
Man, you're bringing up memories today.
that's a lot of memories, right?
I used to love that service.
Yeah,
Dynamic
it was
tables
pretty
and what
nice.
have you. I mean, it was brilliant.
So I'll just go ahead and click here on App Service On, and you can see I have a bunch of options here, and there's many more behind the scenes, and we'll also drill into that in a bit. So the first thing I have to do in order to be able to authenticate is I have to choose the identity provider. So you can see that there's a bunch of them pre-configured, so I can go and get started with Azure AD, which we will be using throughout the day mostly. You can also go with Microsoft accounts directly. You can use Facebook or Google or Twitter, or you can also add your own OpenID Connect compliant providers. So, for example, Apple ID, which has been announced, I think, last year on WDC. So it's a really broad spectrum of what you can do.
And I forgot. I thought Apple ID was only for mobile. Is it actually used on web as well?
Yeah, you can actually authenticate via Apple ID to most of the web services. I don't actually have a link right now, but they're actually an OpenID Connect provider, so you can also use that in EazyAuth. So, all right, so I'll just go with Azure AD, and you can see that it's disabled. So I'll just go ahead and tell it express configuration. So you can see that it's chosen my directory, so I'm using a separate Azure AD. I will tell it to create a new app. If I wanted, I could also select from a list of existing apps, which I already have registered. I give it a name, and I can optionally enable the communication with Common Data Service. Common Data Service is Microsoft's sort of platform for data storage, which implements a lot of cool things, but I think we would spend a couple hours more speaking about it. So maybe sometime later. So I'll just leave it off because I don't have common data service provision in my tenant, so it would fail anyways. And I'll just go and create the registration. So once I hit save, what's going to happen is it's going to create a service principal registration. It will fill all the required properties, and I'll be ready to go. So one more step which is left for me to do is actually to force the Azure AD login into the site. So I'll just select the provider and force the login. Once I hit save, it will create the app service principal. So if we would go into Azure AD right now, I could see the service principal created here. Just you can see I have a bunch of them, but this was the one we created. And it has its client ID. It's actually got the basic API permission, so you can be signed in. And the portal behind the scenes generated the client secret, which it also placed into the configuration of the app. So if
you didn't have to pull that information, you didn't have to do anything. It's all done for you by the EazyAuth.
Exactly. It was done behind the scenes, so you don't have to manipulate the secrets or anything. So right now, if I open the page, I'll just open it in incognito so that we see that it works, because we have the SSO. So what's going to happen, because I'm signed in with my account, it will sign me in automatically. So just to show you, I'm now trying to access the site, and you see that it prompted me for sign in.
Yep.
Right. So enabled. Now, if I try to access the site from my browser, what I'll be presented with is account selection. So choose my account. And I have to grant consent to the app because it's the first time I'm accessing the application. You see it's provisioned in my directory. And once I hit accept, it will actually authenticate me and I have access to the site.
Very nice.
Pretty simple, right? So now we have authenticated a private resource, and now no one from the internet, just no broad users from the internet can access it. Only people with my Azure AD account, with an account in my Azure AD.
So
the nice thing is...
Go ahead, Christos.
Go on, John. No.
Well, so this is authentication, right? So anybody with an account in your directory, in your Azure AD tenant would be able to get to this, right?
Right, exactly.
Okay. So it's kind of like... It's sort of like an IIS when you would check the Windows authentication box. In your your app configuration. So the app itself hasn't really changed at all. It's more the front door to getting to the app, right?
Exactly.
Okay, cool.
So because you got into that topic, I think we should also show how you handle authorization. So how you actually let specific people to access that app, because it may not be desired because you're staging some company secret site to have the entire company access it, right? Yeah. So what we can do is actually use a cool feature of Azure AD, and I suppose that everyone should be familiar with it. It's actually assigning the users to the app. So you see that I have the app here in my enterprise apps. Notice that I'm not in app registrations anymore. I'm actually in enterprise apps, which are the applications which are consented to in my directory, in my specific Azure AD. And I can just go ahead and say that I require user assignment to the application. All right. So once I enable this, and I'll just clear my cookies real quick so that we get prompted for authentication again. So you can just do it here. And I will talk a little bit about how this works a little bit later, why the cookies are here and so on. But since I now required the user assignment, and I'll just make sure that I'm actually assigned to the app. So I'll just remove myself. All right. And if I now hit refresh and try to sign in, I actually don't have access because Azure AD refused to give me the token to actually access the site.
Yeah, Nice. Well, and that also applies to guests, right? So if you've got B2B guests who you have invited to, say, SharePoint Online or a Teams chat or anything like that, those users are guests in your directory and could potentially access an EazyAuth or any Azure AD app if there's no authorization, right?
Exactly. So this is the way to authorize it. Actually, one fact, in this directory, I'm a guest. So what we also demonstrated that it works with B2B guest accounts, right? So that's also very cool. So I just assign myself back to the app in case we do some more demos, right? And I'll probably should have the access again. Sign in. Okay, it may take some time. We'll see. But I should have the access back in a moment. Here we go. So back in the app and assignment. Maybe one more thing about this assignment. You can also assign not just users but entire groups of users. So you don't have to list them one by one, but you can use group assignment. I think that's actually part of Azure AD Premium. So you need to have that license in the tenant, but it's then pretty easy, and you can, just like EazyAuth. That's what it stands for, right? So now we got the site. Now I'll go a little bit, write a bit of code in PHP just to show you what information we get from EazyAuth, because now we are authenticated. But maybe we want to do a little bit more, because the app inside App Service has no idea who I am. It doesn't know that I'm Jan and that I signed in with my Azure AD account. It doesn't know anything about me, right? Because it's just running there. And the beautiful thing about EazyAuth is that you can actually integrate it with your app. So you can make use of it from your code. So I'll just go into the EazyAuth, and I'm doing this on purpose in the browser to showcase one more cool thing, and that's App Service Editor. App Service Editor is a thing which has been an app service for some time, and it allows you to edit the code directly from the browser. It's not Visual Studio Codespaces or GitHub Codespaces, as has been renamed last week, I believe, but it allows you to manipulate files. It looks like VS Code. It's actually using the Monaco editor like VS Code. And I'll just go here, rename this file to index.php so that we can run PHP here. I'll just output the server information, the server details. So PHP info, that will just dump all the information that the server has. So I'll just refresh it. You see that we're running on PHP.
Yeah, this is not very secure, is it? Like, people should not be doing that.
You shouldn't really publish this into the intranet, yeah, because it exposes some paths, like modules which you're loading. So they may be exploited, but just for the demo, we can go down here and...
Well, and EazyAuth is still on, right? So it's not completely to the internet, right?
If I try to access it from the internet, I still get the authentication prompt, right? And now, since we restricted the app only to my user because we left the user assignment on, it should be quite safe. Now, we're just for the note, right now we are broadcasting the client secret and the client ID into the app. So be very careful about it. It doesn't have any invasive permission, so I'm perfectly fine with it. But apps. Basically this is outputting what the server sees. So environment variables. And the reason why I'm mentioning this is that EazyAuth is actually built on environment variables. It's using them to populate and give the information back to the application. So if I scroll a little bit more down here,
can you zoom this one?
Yes,
it's pretty small.
Of course. Okay, is it better?
It looks like it went back to where it was.
One more click, please. Maybe 125. Yeah, there you go.
Okay, so
all dies.
Right. So it scrolled a little bit more than I wanted, but here you can see a few things. So first thing that you notice is the server logon user. So you see that it has my email address. You see that there is also auth user, and it has my email address as well. So EazyAuth is actually taking care to populate all the well-known variables which the server may be looking for to find the user identity. Why I chose PHP for this is that a lot of apps are making use of the remote user variable, like MediaWiki can make use of it, and thanks to it, you can basically enable user authentication into your app pretty much easily, because it just looks into the attribute. If it finds something there, it considers the user authenticated, and you're good to go.
Nice.
So it can take the variables from here. Also, one of the variables here you see is auth type, which has the AAD value. So I went through Azure AD. If I've authenticated via Facebook, there would be Facebook or Twitter or Google or some of the custom providers which I have. And now if we scroll down, we will find a lot of tags here. And this is actually the thing we've been looking for. And these are the tokens, which actually contain all the information about the user. So right now, I could just go ahead, take the token and call, this is ID token, so not this specific token, but I could take the token and call, for example, Microsoft Graph with it, because I have the graph permissions, so I could probably pull information from my profile directly. And here we have the ID token, we also have the refresh token, and we have the access token. So we have all the necessary tokens to make the calls to the services from within our app. And in order to actually use them, you just apply that as a header. You take the access token, apply it as a header to the request you're making to Graph or your API, and you're good to go. So this is basically how EazyAuth lets you access the information in app service.
And if you're not using PHP,
right,
those come in. How do I get those otherwise?
Right. So there are a bunch of ways how to do it, because if you're using, for example, Java or Python or Node.js, you will pull them the same way. So you just in Node.js you'd go to process.env and pull the variables by its name.
Okay.
And you would get a token, or you could just get the user information. Now, sometimes you also need to pull the roles from the user, or some other information like the groups. You can actually get this from the HTTP X MS client principle, which is a base64 encoded JSON. So I'll just take this one, and to showcase it, I'll just decode it. Just do base64 decode. You see, it's a JSON, and in order to make it look nice, we'll just go to this little tool, and you see that
what is this magic over here? Nice.
I have all the token information here about me.
Nice.
Yeah, I'm talking about the JSON formatting.
Oh, yeah, this is actually a web tool. It's probably an old one because it doesn't support even HTTPS. But the cool thing is it doesn't send anything to the server, so it stays in the browser. There's a bunch of these tools available which you can use. I also have the cool one in the browser extension, JSON Viewer. You can install it from the Edge Marketplace, and whenever you get application JSON HTTP response, it will basically visualize it as a JSON. So maybe it's actually an extension which I use a lot. So if we take it with Azure AD, I can go to the well-known discovery endpoint for OpenID Connect, which actually tells me all the information which I need to know to be able to pull be able to authenticate. So I have the authorization endpoint, I have the device code endpoint, I have the information about the signing keys and so on. And you see the extension actually took the JSON and it actually beautified it so that it's much more readable. than just
It
a
is
bunch
quite
of
nice.
text.
Nice.
What happens if you open jwt.ms and stick the token there?
Right.
Because
It's
we
getting
tend
good.
to use that quite a bit. MS, yeah.
Yeah, I know that there was a Microsoft tool or this tool.
Obviously, right?
Yeah, I actually go with jwt.io because it was showing in my browser, just to mention it. But let's do it with this one. So I'll take the token.
I am shocked, Jan.
I'm sorry.
Is it actually a JWT? Is the client principal blob? Is that?
Yeah, that's why I
Yeah.
want to see if you stick
Yeah.
it in the JWT MS, is it going to render properly?
So it's not going to render properly. What it's going to render like. Let's see. Oh, it
Yeah,
won't render.
didn't work. Yeah, it
Because
doesn't
it's
work.
not actually
So-
a well-formed JWT. It's just a blob of.
It's not a JW.
Yeah, it's not a JWT.
Exactly.
Okay.
So in order to just showcase what the token contains, we can take the ID token
Mm-hmm.
and take a look inside. And you actually see
Yeah.
that we got the claims. And these are the exact claims that we have available in this JSON. So what actually this provides you? The ID token is something you would take and validate in your application if you're writing code. EazyAuth does it all for you, so you don't have to validate the token again because it already did that for you. And that's why we have the principal object, which
Yep.
contains the claims, which you just decode, base64 decode, JSON parse, map it to some strongly typed object or just use an anonymous object, and you can make use of the claims.
Right.
Very like that.
Nice.
Obviously, this also requires modification in the app, so you would have to go ahead and change the application a bit. But you have the information here, and you're good to go with that. You see that
And within a few seconds, right? You manage to add the authentication to the front
Pretty
end,
much.
and then if you want to go back and change your code, if you want to do that, then you have access to all the claims that come with your token.
Exactly. So you can just make use of that.
Ooh.
Right. So now we've been in PHP, and I feel a little bit sorry for the .NET guys watching this. And let's switch over to Visual Studio.
Hey, we're any platform, any language, right?
Yes,
so,
exactly.
It's actually nice. You're the first PHP person in our streams, which is great.
That's right.
That's
You
cool.
inaugurated. Fantastic.
I'm not sure if you can see this through the green screen, but I have this tags here. Microsoft loves open source on my
Oh
table.
yeah, we can see it.
And we love open source, obviously.
So do you do more with the Linux stack? So do you do more with PHP and PHP and MySQL? What was the stack back then?
Lime.
What do you?
Lime.
Yes. Lime.
Previously, I used to do a lot of PHP. I actually wrote a library for Azure AAD Authentication, which has quite a lot of users.
Snap.
And
Nice.
maybe I can just show it for fun to check the usage. It's called Auth to Azure, and it's a PHP library. It's got 409,000 downloads right now.
Nice.
Holy. Damn.
So, that's my PHP life. I sometimes do a little bit with WordPress, but other than that, I'm a .NET Core guy. So
Look at that, 2 months ago. So it's a fairly recent update. If people are looking at that, then they can use it. Is there an official MSAL for PHP and yours, or is it?
there is no official MSAL. There have been a couple attempts in the past, but I'm not sure. But I would say that this one is probably the one that's being used if you go with Azure AD. Yeah.
Nice.
So let's switch to Visual Studio real quick. I'll go here.
Mhm.
So I have a web app which is ASP.NET Core. It's MVC app, so you can see we have controllers here. We have some index, privacy, and pretty much regular structure. Now with this app, we actually can integrate it into EazyAuth. So again, if you were writing a .NET Core app, you could go with two ways. first you could go and implement OpenID Connect middleware, or you could go with the Microsoft Identity.web package, which has been recently introduced, which gives you a lot of freedom of what to do with authentication, what you can do, how you can customize the flows. It handles the token caching and pretty much everything for you. Or you can just go ahead and make use of EazyAuth and basically have the app look at the tokens which have been passed to it and interpret it as the claim's identity. So in order to do that, I already have the code ready because it's just a few lines. We just go here, add a library which is called an EazyAuth middleware, and I'll just take a brief moment
Detour?
to talk. Yeah, detour to talk about these. Thank you for that. There's actually multiple libraries which implement EazyAuth. One of them is an EazyAuth middleware. I will talk a bit later why I chose it to showcase. But there is, for example, this KK-ASP.NET Core EazyAuth Authentication, which also can interpret the principles being passed in the variables. So you see that it's very easy to add it as well. It's all the same. There's this one. Not this one, but there is actually I think about 3 or 4 of these libraries.
There's one from Maxime Rigier, who's a CDA.
Right. I think I got here. I got it. I just couldn't find the right tab.
That's fine. That's why we're here for.
Yeah. So you also get it very easily set up. So you just install the NuGet package. You add the authorize, and you're good to go.
Good to go.
So back to the code, and why I chose to showcase the EazyAuth middleware, because when you develop, you usually develop locally. In the PHP world, we were usually, or at least what I was doing, is that I wrote the code, pushed it to the server via FTP, it uploaded, and I could see the changes. Now, when I develop .NET, I don't push the code to the server. I just run it locally. And in order to do that, what may come in handy is being able to use EazyAuth locally. And this middleware actually allows you to do it because it can interpret your custom JSON file with the mock data and pass it into the identity for you. So here is a switch, which actually checks whether I'm in the development environment, whether the ASP.NET Core environment is set to development. And if it's set to here, it will just populate the identity data with this mock file. So you see that I have the claims here, I have the AAD provider name, I could also have the ID token, and some more information about the user. So if I run this app locally, just start it. It opens up a browser, and since I'm authenticated, it actually outputted all the claims that are available in the identity.
Nice.
So this is local. So I'm running on my local host.
Yep.
And we will get back to the local host as well. But I could just go right now, create a new app service, and publish this online. So we see that it actually really works. So I'll switch to my Azure portal again. I'll create a new web app. So GJ 425 show EasyAuth.NET. I'll make it run code. So this is ASP.NET Core 3.1 running.
No support for 5 yet, but it's coming very, very, very soon.
Exactly.
You can bring your own containers if you want to test with 5, right?
Yeah, you can bring your own runtime. Okay. And I think there's also a package already, or there used to be packages for in the past.
Right.
So I'll just create a site. here. The cool thing about app service, once you create the app service plan, which can take about a minute, once you have the app service plan, the sites are created in a couple seconds.
Yep.
So it's really...
So the app service plan is more or less your infrastructure, which you don't really manage. So it's a VM somewhere running.
Exactly.
And then you have the ability to deploy as many sites as you want. Obviously, you don't want all your sites to run off one VM.
Yeah.
So be aware when you do that. But it does provide... Yes, what some people don't realize that an app service allows you to deploy multiple websites. There used to be this kind of notion that it has to be a one-to-one. So people were paying a lot more for what they were running. Now you can consolidate some sites into the same app service.
Exactly, and you can also use the always on feature of app service, which will basically pulse the sites which haven't been accessed in like 20. It will basically recycle the app service pool and pause it until a new request comes in.
Yep.
The site will take some time to actually start. The cold start takes some time, but you can then run more services. So I'll go here. I will enable app service authentication real quick. So Azure AD, we go with Express. I'll just force it here. And now all I have to do is publish the site. Regularly, you would be doing this via Azure DevOps or some CI or CD pipeline. I'll just right-click and publish from Visual Studio.
We are the right-click publish as well. Don't worry about it. There's no it's safe space. There's no judgment. I mean, it's so quick and easy, right?
Right.
But ideally, you should be using some DevOps infrastructure, whether that's Azure DevOps or GitHub Actions. That's totally up to you. But when you're testing things live, you want to be quick and easy and dirty. So let's do it like this. I like it.
Right. So you see that I have the account switcher in Visual Studio. So I switch to my other account, which actually owns the tenant. And I choose the right subscription. I see the resource groups, and you see that I have the site here. So I'll just go ahead and hit finish. All right. And now if I hit publish, fingers crossed, and it should...
Testing in production.
Testing in production, right? Yeah. This is a cool thing about app service. This will take some time probably to deploy. You can have staging slots with app service at no additional charge, which allow you to do exactly testing in production. You can actually split the traffic between the production and the staging slot, or you can have as many slots as you want. And you can test in production perfectly fine.
And I will be the first one to admit I've also done debugging to an app service where I've deployed something. It was running fine on my local machine. I was like, it's not running in production. I will put in quotes. So I would attach my debugger to an Azure website and test in production, right?
Right.
You don't want to do that. It's very, very, very bad tactic. So it's not an endorsement from me. But if you're testing and you're on your own, you're creating a proof of concept and something is going wrong, it's so much easier to attach remotely and debug in production rather than trying to work out. I mean, you can use App Insights, you can use Kudu, but sometimes it's so easy just to attach a breakpoint. Although you do have snapshot debugging these days and snap points. So things have moved on quite a bit from back in the day when I was developing every day. But there are so many options with .NET and Visual Studio.
Yeah. Just imagine that I was in PHP and I discovered breakpoints instead of doing echo on every line. That was... So, we got the app deployed. I'll just sign in again. It's a new app, so I have to give consent to it. And now you see that I was authenticated and it has my identity. So it's not using the test account anymore. Nice. And you see all the information again in my account. So you have the object ID, you have my display name, first and last, and a bunch of other things like how I authenticated. So this actually contains RSA because I have my computer joined into Azure AD and it's using Windows Hello. So I didn't write my password. I was using the RSA key, which is a strong authentication method. So you have it here. You can also use that for like re-authentication. So you can also, based on this attribute in Azure AD, you can decide whether a user should use some stronger method to authenticate or something like that.
Right.
So we got it working with .NET. Also, it was very easy, just adding 2 lines and one NuGet package, and you're good and running. So okay, this is app service. Let's go a little bit into functions. What do you think about that? Because
serverless.
EazyAuth works with
near
functions.
and dear to my heart.
Yeah.
I've done so much damage with functions, and by damage I mean awesome solutions. But
right. So I'll go ahead and create a new function. So since functions actually run on app service infrastructure, not the consumption plan, but you can also make it run on the app service infrastructure, on the app service plan. It basically has access to EazyAuth as well, the same way that they integrated in regular web apps. We can also use functions for it. So I'll just go here and make the function. Function. I'll choose that I want to run code. I'll choose that it's a .NET Core 3.1. We'll go with West Europe. And let's not do it on Windows. Let's do it on Linux. What do you say? Because .NET Core runs there, right?
Everywhere. It
runs everywhere.
Exactly. From your TV all the way to VMs.
Exactly. Also your smartwatch, right? I think Hanselman was doing demo on that, and that was pretty cool.
Yeah, you can use Xamarin with .NET Core and deploy it to your watch, to your Android watch, to your Apple Watch, everywhere.
So,
I can't think of, .NET Core actually allows you to write almost everything, which is insane when you think about it.
Yeah, it's a great platform for every developer, right? And since you can target anything, that actually makes the language pretty versatile, right? You can pretty much use it for everything. So while this is getting deployed, this may take a bit. Let's talk about how EazyAuth works behind the scenes. I think that's also important to mention, because as you noticed, I haven't done anything to the app, and it was just working. So on Windows app service plans, it's basically being used as an IIS module, which is in the request pipeline. So when the request arrives to http.sys and arrives to IIS, IIS takes all the modules that it needs to pass the request through to actually pass it then to your application. It acts like a middleware in ASP.NET Core. So what it does is it triggers the EazyAuth middleware, and if it enumerates the configuration from the app settings, and if it finds that it needs to do the authentication or the user is authenticated, it takes its action, and once it's done, it will either send the user away, like tell you you're not authenticated, or redirect you to the authorization endpoint. And if you're all good, it will just pass you to the app. This is how it works on Windows and IIS. On Linux, on the other hand, basically a Linux app service is just powered by Docker containers. So you have a runtime container to which you deploy your code, or you can deploy a container as well. And on Linux, you don't have any IIS and pipeline. So what they actually do is they're using something that's called ambassador pattern. And I'll just find a picture of it.
I never heard of that.
Right.
I'm not big at Linux development other than using Kestrel and .NET Core, but I did not know about the ambassador stuff.
So basically, the ambassador pattern is it's acting like a proxy. So what they do is they spin up a container running side by side with your service, and it acts like a middleware. So when the request comes, it first hits your container. It hits the EazyAuth container first. EazyAuth does its things, authenticates or passes you to your service, and basically that's the magic. That's the magic on Linux. So they just have a separate container, and we will also make use of that because that's the key thing to run EazyAuth locally for you. So we got it running. I got the function deployed.
Thank you. Skella Honza says it's more like an architecture pattern rather than Linux-related stuff, and I've added the link. Thank you very much, Skella. That's absolutely right. It is an architecture pattern, so I stand corrected. It's not Linux stuff. It can be run anywhere.
Exactly. So I just noticed one thing. Because I deployed this function into the consumption plan, we can't make use of the EazyAuth in this. So because they don't have the container running 24/7 for you, because when you're in consumption, they only run it when you need it. So
dynamic,
it's not compatible with that. So I'll just go back to my backup where I have the function already running.
But now if it's running in Windows on a Windows consumption plan, it is available, right?
I think so.
Yeah, it should be. Yeah.
I think so. Yeah.
Because it's offered by the platform, not by a separate container that it has to run.
Exactly.
Right? Yeah.
So here we go into the functions in the Azure Functions. I already have the EazyAuth enabled, so I just configured it via the Express settings again. So it's just already done, and I have the function here, which is set to run an HTTP trigger, and the code is very simple. What functions do for you is they also populate the claims principal in the HTTP context from the EazyAuth parameters. So what I do is I take a look into the user variable which contains the claims, and I just take the first claim, which is equivalent to the name of the user. So if I go here and open the site, it pops out my name from the token. So you can see that we just went into the functions. We haven't had to add any middleware, any code, and we just have the claims principal available for us to use here. It's very simple.
Very nice.
And along with that, because right now I'm using the browser, right? Just doing everything interactively. But let's imagine that this is an API.
Right.
It writes some data, or gives us some data, and we want to do some server-to-server authentication. So S2S. This is what when you do this, as usually you have two services which need to talk to each other. It's basically application to application communication, and in order to do that, what you need to do is you need to have a service principal registered in Azure AD. So I already did that.
So that's another app registration, right? You need to have another app registration.
You can also use the
other
same.
service.
You can also use the same, but from the security perspective, you want every application to be represented by its own service principal. So in case you get your private keys leak or your client secret leaks or the certificate, or you have some compromise, you just want to cut off that specific application, not everything at once.
Yeah.
So I got the token request in Postman ready. Once again, you can see the client secret, dirty quick stuff. And I just called into Azure AD, which gave me the access token for the application. If we go to jwt.ms, I'll probably be using this from now on. Thank you for showing me. It's pretty cool. One thing which I noticed, it doesn't let me to validate the signature. So I cannot check whether the signature is valid, which probably doesn't doesn't matter because jwt.io doesn't handle the RSA signature as well. It just handles the symmetric one. So yeah, probably this is cool. It also says it's been issued by Azure AD. That's a nice feature. I like that. So here you can see that there is no user. The only information is that I am an app ID and I have this this is my app ID, which is me, right? It's my ID. So if I go back to Postman, I'll just copy paste this token and put it in the beer value. So I'm calling into my function. I'm calling the PHP function, but I could be calling anything. If I send the request, you see that it got the identity again. So it's telling me hello, and it doesn't know my name because I'm a service principal. It knows my app ID. So you can also use the EazyAuth to actually authenticate service-to-service calls, and it will handle the token validation for you, and it will pass you the similar data. It won't pass you the first name and last name because app doesn't have that, but you get to authenticate your calls, and it's a great start because using Azure AD for service-to-service calls is much better than not using any authentication at all or whitelisting IP addresses, right? I have seen that many times that people just went ahead and whitelisted IP addresses, and that's it's much easier to spoof an IP address than to spoof a cryptographically signed token, right?
That's true.
So I mean, I don't know how you guys in Microsoft are far with quantum computing.
Almost there. I mean,
Almost
we can't
there,
disclose
right?
anymore, but
So maybe it will be easier to whitelist IP addresses again, but my beliefs are with cryptographically signed tokens rather than IP addresses at the present moment.
Yeah.
So
I mean, it's another layer of security, right? So
Exactly.
you can also whitelist your applications,
Yeah.
but ideally, and the best practice is to always have an authenticated API or service that validates your tokens, not just
Exactly.
takes the token, it also looks into the claims to make sure that you have the right permissions, the right roles. So there are extra steps that you can add always to lock down security, but starting with simple steps is great. Don't do just one. It needs to be layers of
Exactly.
security applied to your solution, depending on what kind of data you're managing and what have you. But just using delegate authentication takes also the onus away from managing your own user data and databases. So that
it's a good head start. And once again, I haven't had to write any code to protect the API. I just enabled EazyAuth, and it accepts the valid tokens which are meant for my application. So I'm all good with that.
And we could do that with user access tokens too, right? If I've got a
Exactly.
SPA front end, React front end or JavaScript front end of some kind, then access tokens that I get to talk to my backend API, EazyAuth handles validating all those tokens too, which is great.
Yep. You get all of that. And
yeah, and with serverless, it's becoming a prevalent kind of pattern, right? So somebody sticks a single page app in the front, and then they're using functions as their backend API to interact with Azure Services data or on-prem data, what have you. So adding that authentication easily via EazyAuth is a great way to secure your application end to end.
Yeah, exactly.
I think that would be a good test, right? Maybe running Azure static web apps. I don't know. Do static web apps support EazyAuth? It should be.
Yeah, they do. So static web apps deploy a bunch of resources for you. They deploy the storage account. They deploy Azure Functions. I think they're, however, by default they run Node.js only though.
Right. I haven't tested it yet, so it's a new service. Haven't had a chance to play with it, but I wonder how easy it would be to do it end to end, right?
I think there may be an issue because since it deploys the Azure function, it will be in consumption and it may be on Linux. So you may not get the full functionality of EazyAuth there. But I've been browsing GitHub lately. and there's this repo called Azure Functions host.
Oh.
And this contains the Azure Functions magic. It contains a lot of cool stuff. So if you can't sleep during the night, I suggest you go and read through the code. It's fun stuff to do. I don't do it through the night, but if I go here and if I search for EazyAuth,
Yeah, can you zoom in a little bit?
Yes,
so
of
people
course,
can see
of
what
course.
we're seeing. Perfect, thank you.
You can take a look at some of the commits, which actually added support, or we're trying to add support on June. So it may not be in the current release, or it may be some undocumented functionality, but it's already there in the code. You can make use of that if you figure out your way.
Right. Okay.
So
Like open source for the win.
exactly. So hopefully we'll be able to do that. I really hope for that, because I think the consumption plans, especially on Linux, are pretty awesome for functions. So yeah.
There you have it, folks. EazyAuth.
Easy.
End to end.
Nice.
On app service and functions.
Yep. Pretty much everywhere across Azure services. Since
PaaS,
we're
right?
yeah, across PaaS. Since JP has been talking about front end, we can also make use of EazyAuth in the browser directly if we have some single page app. We can also call it to obtain some data. So I just open some site where I'm authenticated. So for example here, and I'll open the developer tools because we all are developers. And let's see if I zoom in this way. Did it zoom in?
Yep.
Cool. So via the browser, I can also make calls to the EazyAuth endpoints. They actually have a couple endpoints which allow me to obtain some data. And as I was talking about the cookies in the app, I have the app actually, when you authenticate via the browser, they set a session cookie for you, which contains the information about the user. So it's again some encrypted data. This is not a base64 encoded, but I believe it's encrypted via the data protection API, so it cannot get you cannot manipulate it. And they resolve the identity. Thanks to this, you can I'm sorry, this is a little bit tricky to zoom with the magnifier.
Yeah.
Across three screens. You should see my three screens right now because they're like
Going crazy.
Yeah, it's crazy view. So what I can go in the browser is I can just call the fetch function from here. Okay, now when I type, it's moving on its own. So I just choose this one. And if I call this endpoint /.auth, which is the well-known endpoint for EazyAuth, and you can also change this in case it would conflict with your custom endpoint or something. You can go ahead and change the auth part. I will show you why in a little bit later. So if I call this, it will make a HTTP request, and maybe I'll unzoom a little bit so that I can move with the mouse. More freedom. So you see that the browser made a HTTP request.
Yeah.
And as the response, I got an object which contains the information about me. So here you have again the access token, you have the ID token, you have the refresh token, and you have all the claims about the user.
Check that out. Nice.
So again, those are the token claims we have seen multiple times, and you can make use of these information in the browser.
Nice.
Directly.
Well, and that's also so. Imagining we're, say, in a world where we don't have, there's like virtually no language support. I mean, how could I say challenge a user to do different schemes, or can we support multiple schemes where I say I want to sign in with say Azure AD, but then also allow Facebook, right, or something else?
Right. So since on the settings page of the EazyAuth, we had multiple providers, you can configure to have multiple providers here
Right.
at the same time, and you can then direct the user to authenticate with a specific provider which you may choose. So what you do is you just point the user to the .auth/login/ the identity provider name, and they will get authenticated.
Oh, cool. So you would change that action to be, say, would the action have to change to be anonymous so that you could handle that on your own?
I believe so,
Okay.
because right now what it does is it actually
Defaults to the one that you choose.
defaults
from
to the
drop-down,
one that
right?
you choose,
Yeah.
right? So if you choose that one, it will not let you display any page.
Right.
But there is a way, and I'm keeping that for later because it's part of a preview thingy which is out, and it lets you log in with the Apple ID stuff and things like that. But I just want to save it for a bit later. Before
John, stop
we-
stealing Jan's.
I mean, I'm sorry. I'm just asking questions. So, well, is this a good time for us to take a short break?
Absolutely.
I think it is. Yeah.
Okay, cool. Well, we're gonna go take a
Let's take.
we'll take a 5-minute break. We'll be
Fine.
back by 11:18 Eastern, or 18 after the hour, and we're gonna take a quick break, and we will see you all in a few minutes.
For some magic insights that Jan is going to give us. Stay tuned.
All right,
Going back.
we're back. So what's next?
We are
So we're
back
gonna
indeed.
talk about some preview features, undocumented preview features.
Some documented preview
Oh,
features.
those are the best.
So we mentioned a couple times like setting up some Apple ID or custom provider, and
Yes.
I will not go with Apple ID because I haven't managed to get the app registration there because you need to get the developer account, and I don't have that.
They force you to get a developer account to be able to
I
work
think
with Apple
so.
ID.
I
Oh,
think
come
so.
on, Apple. Like, I'm not making. I get it. $100 is not an insane amount, but if you want to test it and add it to your app, I mean,
Well, and
it's their prerogative.
and
They can do whatever they want. but
generating the
it's-
Yeah.
generating the client secret for Apple ID is not too much fun either.
Oh, really?
Yeah, it's like
Oh, you tested it already?
yeah, we did it for B2C probably, I don't know, a year ago when it first came out, and it was you have to, I mean, essentially you sign an assertion, and that's your client secret, and it's only valid for a few months, and it's a bit more involved than just either a static string or even just generating a certificate. Like you have to sign an assertion, and it just ends up being extra work and extra code, and they're in the early days they weren't publishing their metadata, and so you had to essentially sort of rehost it yourself. You had to generate it and host it yourself, and then there's the weirdness, like some of the privacy stuff. They were preventing you from, like, your ID token wouldn't have the user's name and email in it, because and you can choose a different email address, like a proxy, and
Yeah.
and that data would come back in the initial response, which was a code request, like an authorization code request. So it would come back in there, and it would not come back in the ID token. So if you weren't able to capture, if you didn't have control enough to capture that code request and pick that extra data off, you were kind of dead in the water. Now, I don't know if that's changed. I haven't used it in probably 5 or 6 months, so I had heard it had gotten better, but yeah, there's just a lot of sort of quirkiness about it that you didn't really have to deal with other OpenID platforms. So technically compliant, but hard to use.
So like the Apple way, and I'm not going to single out Apple over here, but coming so late into the authentication game or any technology game and having that experience that has been built up over years and still getting it wrong at that point or making it super hard to achieve something is just insane. So I don't get how in 2020 or 2019 when that came out, they couldn't just take all the best bits of other providers and make it easy for people to onboard. But again, I'm not part of the Apple team, so I can't really speak for what went inside the mentality. Hopefully they will make it easier for everyone to start using it, because it's nice to have all these different providers available to your app. So as a developer, you want to make it as easy as possible for everyone to log into your app, right?
I'm pretty sure it's required too. So if you do federated auth in your Apple apps, right, in an iOS app, I'm pretty sure you have to also offer sign in with Apple now. So you
have to do it with Objective-C.
Well,
or just C, just because we hate you.
I think you can use Xamarin just fine, but yeah, they force you to enable it, and like JP was saying, they didn't have the metadata endpoint, so you couldn't do this discovery. It was really complicated.
Maybe they should make it just make you use Prolog or COBOL or whatever to do that.
don't remind me. Don't remind me of COBOL. Just running a project with it. So
you're running a project with Prolog?
With COBOL.
Oh, COBOL, right. I was like, what? Who's running Prolog in production? I thought it was only academic. And what an awful semester to spend. Like, that was the most horrid lesson I had in college when I was learning programming. But I don't know if Prolog is worse than COBOL, so I'm not taking sides.
Yeah, I can't take sides either. So.
Are you at least getting good money for COBOL? Because I know there was like huge demand, especially early days of coronavirus and whatever. Like, I remember New York was paying extortionate amount to get COBOL developers. So
yeah,
saying Camel? I never heard of
OCaml. No, oh my god! I have to leave now.
But I haven't used it.
I feel like I need to go take a shower.
Maybe we should do a show with all the bad experience that we had as developers in the last 20, 15 years or whatever, and see who comes at the top. There should be a consensus.
Oh, you know what? I'm thinking of something different, I think. I'm thinking of what was it? It wasn't OCaml. It may have been it was this Camel-esque that we had to use in SharePoint development a long time ago, and it was just awful. And I remember hating it. I mean, granted, it was SharePoint development, so you're already kind of in a weird, sad corner in the first place. But yeah,
hey, at least I feel that every generation of developers has its kind of a bad thing to work with. I think today it's YAML.
Yeah.
These days, YAML, I think, is the bane of every developer. You miss a space somewhere, and suddenly your YAML just breaks apart, and you don't know why. I think I saw Scott Hanselman put a tweet the other day out where he was messing around with YAML, and then the editor was just freaking out because he was moving spaces around, and it's like, man, that's so painful. Space-defined languages are. Oh. Anyway, sorry for the trip down the horrid experiences. So DT in the Cloud said, I had a college class with Lisp. Oh, Sassel. I think you're making acronyms up now. Scheme, Smalltalk, and a couple of other smaller languages. Can you be smaller than Smalltalk in smaller languages?
Well,
barely made it through that one.
So I mean, Sassel sounds really familiar. That was a precursor to SAML, wasn't it? Or was it? Or no, maybe it wasn't. Yeah, it was an old security thing.
Protocol?
Yeah, simple.
Okay.
Yeah.
Genetic programming in Lisp for university. Wow.
Wow.
I mean, that's impressive. You're doing genetic programming, but Lisp? At least it wasn't Perl. I think Perl is just at the top there. Worst language ever. Okay, well.
At on top of that stack, we used to write Pascal at college, so.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I see.
Well,
but this thing,
Scala, Hansa, you have Scala in your name. How about Scala? Do you like Scala? I hope so.
Well, at least
you have in your name.
The other Scala is spelled with a C, so maybe not. See, the thing is, when I was in college, I went to college for music education because I wanted to be a band director, and so the programming classes I took were all sort of on the side, and so most of my programming classes were Java and Python. In fact, they were almost all Python. And Haskell. Yes, I tried to do some Haskell once. And I also did some Scala a while back. So we were doing a hackathon on I think it was on Databricks. And you could do one of the language options was Scala, however you say it. And one of the guys at my table at the hackathon, because it was like a 5 or 6 person team, he's told me he was a total Scala pro. So I was like, all right, cool. If you're a pro, then let's use Scala for our project, because it's Java based, so it's sort of like C#. So maybe I'll be okay. And at least syntactically be able to understand a little bit more of it. And turns out he was not a Scala pro.
He was a pro in Google for Scala, right?
Yeah, and then
I know all the forums.
And then I tried to add Azure AD support to GraphQL Engine,
Scala.
And GraphQL Engine is written in Haskell, and I think it was what's it called? There's a certain GraphQL. There's a certain company that puts out a GraphQL like server essentially, and I started working on building like a claims mapper, because they wanted your ID system to put out custom claims. It was Hasura, that's what it was, Hasura. They wanted your IDP to put out custom claims. So the claim name or the claim type would be, Hasura.principal.id. And so it wanted you to put these things out. And of course, Azure AD, we can't do that. You could B2C, but not Azure AD. So I started trying to write a claims mapper, and the thing is, like, I could read the code to some degree, and I knew exactly in my mind what I wanted to do. Is I was going to have this map, and I was going to try to map these two maps together. But there was so much. I don't know if it was like shorthand or syntax sugar or what, but there were so many symbols in there. I was like, I don't even know how to type the symbol. Like, I don't even know what on my keyboard is the equivalent of the operator that they put in this code. And I spent a few nights trying to make it work, and it was just like, all right, I'm going to call Uncle on this one. I can't do it. I'm out. So they say you rise to your level of incompetence, and I think that's exactly what happened when I started trying to do Haskell. So it was
pick, right?
It was interesting, though.
That's my pick.
I mean,
I stopped there.
It was neat. Don't get me wrong, but it was just very different. Very different for me, anyway. So
I don't know. I feel so spoiled with C#, and we're heading towards C# 9, where we're adding some really cool features as well. But I started with .NET back in 2001, and up until today, it's been my poison of choice. And to be honest, everything else, everywhere else I look, I mean, I play around with other languages, but I always come back to C# because that's my love. Undying love for C#, unless something else new comes out and blows my mind away. But I'm too old now to change. You can't learn an old dog new tricks, right? Is that what they say? So here we are, C#, almost in 2021. Yeah, exactly, almost in 2021. Hasura GraphQL.
Yep.
Somebody.
That's what I was working on, and it was. They have actually implemented it, so somebody finally implemented it, so you can use Hasura GraphQL, secure the API calls with Azure AD, which is super cool. Especially if you're building stuff and if you're building new apps that use GraphQL and you want to use Hasura as the front end. But
I was looking GraphQL the other day. I was like, how does this work with Azure AD? I will be curious to see how we can glue it together. Yeah. So maybe one of our upcoming streams will be us messing around with GraphQL and Azure AD.
So it was cool, and. What doesn't completely destroy you makes you a little bit stronger. So at least I have a Haskell story. So when somebody mentions Haskell, I can say, hey, yeah, I tried that once.
Yeah. While you're sitting on the fireplace with your grandchildren, like, back in 2020, I was doing some Hasura with GraphQL. Those were the days. I can imagine. Right.
All right. Sorry.
Okay. Sorry, Jan. We're just going crazy here, and it's only 8 a.m., 8:30 in Pacific, so we got a whole day ahead of us doing all these crazy things. Go for it. What's next?
Cool. So let's go into the preview stuff that we have available.
And before you move in, that's no NDA stuff, right?
That's no NDA stuff.
Right.
It's on the docs. So the docs team has done a great job on documenting those features. And
Okay.
to be honest, I really love Microsoft Docs. Sometimes even give some contributions there when I find something that needs improvement. So it's a pretty cool place to look in for
Yeah.
documentation.
We'll be talking about contributing to docs and how you can help us improve the docs on Thursday. So if you're around on Thursday, 7 a.m. Pacific time, 10 a.m. Eastern time, and 2 p.m. UTC time. See, I'm operating in 3 time zones now. I'm so proud of myself. I'm mapping all the times. We'll be talking with the docs team on how you can get involved, how you can learn about things, and what the process is. But it's great that anybody can go and actually fix stuff or put suggestions about how we can make the docs better. So thanks for doing that, Jan. And hopefully everyone watching us is doing the same.
Yeah, exactly. So let me just put the docs page here real quick. So what we'll be doing is we'll be setting a custom OpenID Connect provider. It's not going to be a super custom one.
Do you zoom in for us, please?
Yes, of course.
Thank you.
The browser.
Perfect.
So what it allows us to do, allows us to specify our custom OpenID Connect provider into the EazyAuth, which was possible in the past. It had some culprits, like you had to do a lot of app settings manually, but here you can do it all in a single file, thanks to this new feature, which allows you to specify all the config in a single file. So in order to do that, I'll go ahead and create a new app service again, so a new web app, rather.
I hope you're putting everything into a resource group that you're going to wipe out afterwards.
Exactly.
Nice.
So I have this 425 show here, and it's actually great use of resource group, right? You use it as a sandbox, which you then wipe, or you forget to wipe it, and then your subscription runs out, and you know.
We know. So while you're creating this, so years ago I did consulting, and like not Microsoft consulting, but like for a consulting firm. And I went to go see a customer, and they had this ridiculous like 4-month process for getting new VMs added to their Hyper-V environment, right? So the Hyper-V environment constantly grew. And it would go. It would spend 10 days at network, and then it would spend 2 weeks at SAN and storage, and it would spend another 2 weeks at security, and it would spend another 2 weeks over here. That is completely ridiculous, over the top onboarding process to get a VM. But they
red tape, man, red tape. Don't say onboarding. That's red tape.
But they had no process for deleting them. So it just continued to grow. And so he told me, the guy I was working with, he told me, he said, well, every 3 years we have to go buy more capacity because, you know, we need more VMs. And while we were there, he RDP'd into a Windows 2000 Advanced Server VM, and he said, I got this on my first day here in 2000, 9 years ago, which this was probably 4 or 5 years ago.
11 years ago?
So this was probably 10 or 15 years ago from now. And he said, nobody knows that it's mine, but you don't want to delete something if you don't know who owns it. And so I told him, I said, well, look, then going to the cloud should be easy for you because you're going to know every month how much you're spending rather than having to wait 3 years to go and look at your Hyper-V utilization. So it's completely bananas. But, I mean, we see it all the time, right? It's pretty common. And you treat the cloud like on-prem, and you just stack the shit up until it keeps make more room for it, right? We got to move out to a farm somewhere in Iowa where you can put more servers. So
I love the cloud. I mean, I worked in a company where we had our server rack in the other room, and then we decided to move to a provider, not a cloud provider, but a VM provider. It will remain unnamed to protect the innocent. And I remember we were looking at upgrading our servers, so we spent 6 months negotiating with the provider why we wanted a 64 RAM server to run our SQL server. And they're like, why do you want 64? Like, I want 64, what's your problem? Oh, yeah, let's negotiate a new price. So we'll go through 2-week cycles trying to find what the best price was. Like, dude, these are the specs. We're not moving. Just give us a price and we can be like, well, we can save you some money. And then we had more meetings with the chief architect and whatever, and then they were trying to sell us support, obviously. And I remember 6 months to deploy new SQL servers. Today, you go into Azure, you're like, click, 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 7 clicks, and you're done. And new kids won't know how spoiled they are. Like, oh man, I have to wait for 5 minutes for my VM to deploy. I was like, are you serious? Dude, I spent 6 months writing docs and specs and being on multiple calls just to get a VM up and running. 5 minutes, you can wait.
Yeah, I know. I feel your pain. I've been through that as well. So
I'm telling you, we need a story. We need a segment. We need at some point we need to do like stories from the crypt or whatever, where we bring all these to the surface, so people are like, you know what? I'm very lucky. I love programming today, and I need to stop complaining.
That would be a great topic. So
Yeah.
we got a site created here. What we need to do in order to enable the configuration is we need to change a couple settings in Azure. Directly in the Azure Resource Manager, because it's not available in the UI. So I'll show you one cool tool which you can actually use to visualize the Azure Resource Manager. You may have heard of it or seen it. It's called Azure Resources. So it's basically a tool which lets you to view the entire API of Azure Resource Manager. So I can go here, I can drill down to my subscriptions, choose the right one, go to the resource groups, choose the resource group which I need, and from the web providers, I'll choose the site which I just created here. And that's a custom provider site here. So I'll drill down to the config, to the auth settings, and you see that I have various authentication settings here available to actually modify. I have it in read and write, so I can just hit edit and make changes to the JSON file. So first we need to set the enable to true. Then we need to set is auth from file to true. So I'll just edit here is auth from file true. And the last thing was auth file path. And I'll just give it auth.json, which is the file. So no YAML here, still saying JSON, right? And what we do, we just hit put, and it will update the settings, hopefully. So you see that it has been added here. And now we have enabled the site to consume the new configuration file. So I have it here. We have the full reference to the file. I'll go through some cool things which you can do with it, because it allows you to do even more things with EazyAuth thanks to this. So let's go back to the site. Now I got lost a bit in the portal. Here we go. This is the custom provider. So in order to modify the file, the easiest way is to go to Advanced Tools, to Kudu. One funny thing, when you use the app service editor, you cannot use it to create files. You can only modify them. So if you need to create a file, you need to go to the Advanced Tools, which is kind of annoying. But then you can switch back to the app service editor. So let's go here.
Did you know you can drag and drop files into the editor here?
Yeah. You can just.
I was blown away the first time I was shown that. Like, you can drag from your desktop into the site and it does it. I was like, what the hell? That's amazing.
There's also one cool thing which it does. I'll just create a folder for it. So when I open it, what I can do is I can take a zip file.
Yes.
I can put it here. It will upload it and it will unpack it for me. So it's very useful.
Yes.
Which is different from zip deploy.
Exactly.
So make sure, and don't ever copy a WAR file there, because I've made that mistake a few times.
Yeah.
So
does it do gzip as well, or just zip?
I'm not sure. Let's see if I have some gzip file.
Tar file.
Let's see.
Testing in production. See, folks.
No, I don't. But we can get some. We can get some zip.
And this is,
I believe, 7.
this is still a Windows
7
app
zip.
service, right? The one that we're working in.
Yeah.
Okay. Because I don't think, and it's been a few months since I did a Linux app service, but I don't think you get the same degree of functionality in a Linux app service in Kudu as you do in a Windows one. It seemed to be fairly limited relative to the Windows one.
It's not 100% same. Let's see, maybe WordPress has it. So get WordPress. Okay, I can get Archie. Okay. Let's do it.
It's only 12 megabytes. That's not too bad.
Yeah.
And
It's
then you
zipped.
add the extensions and becomes it becomes 520 megabytes.
Exactly. Well, this is zipped. So if you unpack this, you're gonna grow crazy. Let's see. I'll just make a folder here. I have done once a mistake that I unpacked a huge zip file, and then you can use this PowerShell here to wipe it, but it takes some time. So I got the file, and it doesn't seem to. It's
see?
a personal.
Easy.
Yeah, it's a personal zip. But you can I think unzip it via the command line, because with app service they ship 7-zip, so it should be somewhere here available, or it's on the drive somewhere, so you can use 7-zip to unpack it if you need to. All right, so I'll create the auth file here, auth.json. I'll clear up here, and we need to specify the identity provider here. So I have the definition ready, and we'll go through it. So as you can see, I'll be connecting it to B2C, because everyone wants to use B2C, because it's a great tool. And I didn't mean to say no one wants to use it. I mean no one wants to pay to Apple for just demos. So B2C lets you to federate a bunch of providers into one. It's actually cool to use B2C to federate multiple providers, because you federate them at a single point, and then in EazyAuth and multiple sites, you just consume that single B2C directory, which maintains the identity. So it makes it
I would love for the EazyAuth folks to go and add B2C as an extra option there. Because, I mean, it's great that you can configure it manually like that. But having it out of the box will probably bring a lot more visibility into what is available and how you can use other OpenID Connect aggregators, right? Because B2C becomes an aggregator for all these. Yeah.
Well,
I think it's also... Yeah, sorry, JP.
Was to say this is a nice way too to get to the V2 endpoint of Azure AD if you need that and you're not there, because the regular EazyAuth is still using V1 right now. So this would be a great way to get that in there pretty quickly and easily too.
Yeah. Nice. There is a way to actually do it via the Azure AD configuration, that you can also specify the issuer on your own. So it will go there and do the discovery. But I just wanted to showcase this because it allows you to literally take any OpenID Connect compliant provider and just go and use it with EazyAuth.
Go crazy with OpenID Connect. That should be the name of our show.
So what we have here is, I'll first go through the identity provider. I'll just zoom in again. So I generated a client ID for my
that's
app.
a client ID inside B2C, correct?
Yes. So I can show it because I'll need to set the redirect URIs anyway. So I'll just go to B2C. Oh. And I noticed a bug in B2C while doing this demo, because I associated a custom domain to B2C in Azure AD, because I just wanted to, I just didn't want to type like this long resource name I had. So, and now it's actually giving a little bit of issues. For example, when I have this app here, I take a look at endpoints, it actually strips the domain name from here. It all works fine, but you need to change this manually.
Yes.
So don't add custom domains, even though Azure AD allows you to do it. Just don't do it.
Not yet, anyway, until we fix the bug.
Yeah, exactly.
Thanks for letting us know.
So I have the app here. It's a standard application registration, no magic. All I need to do is add the authentication redirect address. So I'll just copy this, and I believe I named it custom provider. You'll see in a moment. So you see that in this address, this is the redirect callback. So I reference the name of the provider, which I have described in the JSON file. So I have that here. And I also need to generate the client secret, which I will use with the application. And I will need to delete a lot of apps and a lot of resources. It's kind of shame that I can't store app registrations in resource groups as well, because that would make it a lot simpler. So I'll just name it custom provider. Just give it 1 year. So I've got the client secret. And as you can see in the definition, I don't put the client secret into the file. I use application setting here.
Very nice.
Which is also cool. And I'll just put it here. So this client secret. Here we go. The portal will mask it, so when you do demos, they will not show up. Unfortunately, it's too late for that now. But
you know what? I think there's an extension that the CDA developed that allows you to mask certain things. I don't know if you are aware of that. So in certain cases, it will hide things, but I don't know how intelligent it is to do app secrets.
Yeah,
I mean app registration secrets.
Yes, it's this kind of extension. It actually allows you. It masks all the subscription names and things like that. But I think it was actually taken away from the Chrome store for some reason.
No.
So you can install it manually, but it doesn't work with the latest portal, I believe. So I'm not gonna try to bend my edge to load the extension now, because actually let's try it. We got some time right for that.
Oh, we got plenty of time.
Okay, so let's go to Edge extensions. Not even sure if
somebody says Azure Mask works well in Firefox. Chrome doesn't allow it due to the name Azure in it.
Oh, okay.
Oh, come on.
So let's see. Adding the extension.
There was an SVG downloader.
I can't enable it for some reason. Well, it was added with my knowledge because I drag and dropped it here.
Somebody said, I've noticed that there are some screens where it does not hide the GUIDs.
Yeah. It didn't receive an update for long, but I've been using it for some time in the past, and it was quite cool for videos. So
same here.
Yeah.
When I was working with customers and clients, and you do demos and user groups, it's nice to hide certain things because you don't want passwords to be leaking all over the place.
Yep, that's what password managers are for. Just to be.
Somebody said, I've doxed myself several times doing my stream on Pulumi. That's code with Son. Yeah, man. It's very hard to hide stuff efficiently, especially when you're streaming because you're live. I think if you're doing pre-canned demos, then it becomes a little bit easier. But still, I've done it so many times now that I don't care. You want to go into my test tenant? Go for it. Go crazy. Yeah.
I usually have MFA on the test users, so what I actually do for that is a password manager. It's this one's called Bitwarden, and fun thing, it runs on Azure. That's why I use it, and it's in .NET Core and it's open source, so it's really. It's
actually Xamarin for the mobile, and then .NET Core for the browser and desktop. So it's a great one, and I use it as well.
Yeah, and they just added single sign-on, so you can connect any OpenID Connect provider to it. So talking identity, so it's all connected, which is really cool. And it can generate the one-time codes directly in there, so it's then simple to use with MFA for test accounts. And because I've copied the client secret here, not everyone may be comfortable with it. What you can actually use is use Key Vault for secret storage. And App Service has another great feature which allows you to just specify the name of the secret, say that it's in Key Vault, and give it the connection string into the Key Vault. And thanks to Managed Service Identity, which is something we will not be going in today, because that would take the whole day. It will just pull the secret from there at runtime of the app, so it's not set in the portal anywhere, and it's much safer, to have it in Key Vault than just statically code it in the app settings, anyways.
That's amazing. I did not know that you could reference Key Vault secrets inside app secret settings. I learned something new today, and I love it.
And it's not preview anymore, so that's cool. Because I remember we started using it on one project when it was a preview, and then it matured into GA. So this is really cool.
Yeah, it is.
Very nice.
Yeah, it's super cool.
You can also do it in code. So if you're using .NET Core, you can also use the Key Vault provider to go and pull information using Managed Identity. So you have choices there how you approach it. But if you have PHP and you don't really use Managed Identities in code or Node, I think we have them. But if you don't want to do it, App Services settings is great. Second alternative. Love it.
Much better than storing secrets in the code, right?
Yeah. Oh yeah. Please do not. Please do not. I mean, I have so many stories here about that.
Yeah.
We'll keep them though for the segment, because it's so many stories.
But thanks to GitHub and the features that Microsoft's adding, they're actually proactively scanning the code for secrets. So they let you know on GitHub when you commit a secret. So that's a very nice feature.
Well, that assumes that you're using source control for your code.
Right.
As I'm saying, there are stories there that can be told, and they're not stories from back in 2005, right? I'm not like SourceSafe or some other. What was SourceKey or whatever other tools were back in the day. I'm talking about 2018 kind of stuff, right?
Rational Clear Case. I used that probably 9 or 10 years ago. It was awful. Don't ever use Rational. It's awful. I hated it.
God, Rational used to be so big back, when I was in uni. Rational Rose, and
I worked at
I
worked at a bank, so right.
Has anybody, we have 15 people on the show right now, but has anybody ever used Rational Rows, use case tools and class diagrams for work outside university? Because I never met it in my 16 years career working in the industry. I never went to a company and said, hey, just go and draw the use case before you actually write anything. But I'm curious to see if other people have used it at all. Maybe we can put it out there on Twitter. More people can respond, but I never.
Apparently, you can still buy ClearCase. Wow. I mean, it's IBM, right? So it's kind of like opening a door to. It's like opening a door to history, but yeah, you can. Apparently, you can still buy ClearCase. So you can contact them for a price. So you know what that means. Yeah, it's it has a.
We'll send a few consultants over to your office to see what you need.
It has a price list, and literally every item in the price list is contact us.
Scala says our analytics or our analyst is using it. So you guys are using Rational Rows or Rational Source Code, whatever the name is.
You say Rational Rows, like ROSE?
Yeah, was that not the tool?
No, I mean I guess it was. I'm looking at it now. It was an XDE, an extended development environment.
Yes.
And yeah, it was all UML stuff.
Yeah. Bring back UML.
Wow.
This stuff. That.
Who knows what sort of ads I'm going to start getting on Twitter now after searching for UML and IBM Rational.
That will teach you. That'll teach me
to search in a non-private browser. Wow.
We're devolving into territory that we shouldn't be touching today. Let's go back to the nice, safe, warm space of EazyAuth. Right. Take it back, Jan.
Right. So we have the configuration here. You see, I have the configuration endpoint here, well known, which tells which configures tells EasyAuth where to look for the config. I also have their name claim type, which tells me where to look for the username to display, and I also provide the scopes. So I'll just save this. I'll get back to the rest of the config later. And what I need to do after saving, I need to restart the site because the module needs to reload the configuration. This is not yet automated, so in order for it to pick the changes, you need to do this manually. Now, once it restarts, it's still rebooting, so let's give it a moment.
Well, I think JP, Alexa, we could be, doing so many things, like ordering UML books for you.
Nope, not doing it.
I wrote the address wrong, so I'll just fix that in the config. It's not custom provider. It's what did I do wrong? I did something wrong. I'll just copy paste the address.
Yep.
From the address bar. Because the error actually tells me where I try to navigate, so I'll just do the URL decode. Go the address. Looks the same to me. Alright, let's try to save it. Let's try to save it. Let's try it again.
Is the config file right?
I think I got it.
But
right.
that say that the redirect URL is not right, right? Is that the?
In the config file, it only says the configuration to B2C. This should work fine because I think it actually went through the B2C. So this manifest loads.
Cool.
But now it's telling me that it doesn't exist. No NX domain. Okay, this. Oh, it's show 425, not 425 show. Damn. I have to. Typos.
It does say show 425 though.
No, it didn't in the before that.
Right, okay.
So I just copy pasted it wrong. So let's do it again. All right, here we go. Now I'm on my B2C page. It's all again done by EasyAuth. I'll just use Facebook here to sign in. So we use some social provider, and you see I'm in the app. I have been authenticated,
nice. Yeah.
And once again, to pull the information, we can go into the console, and we can ask it to fetch information about me. So I'll zoom in. So get on the network tab. And you can see all the info from the token. So you see that I went via the B2C provider. I used the policy here. I can also pass my custom attributes from B2C. This is, again, something we will not be going into, but EasyAuth can interpret that just fine and pass you the custom values. So this could be some address attribute. It could be some loyalty program points, whatever you need. And I have all the identity info, and I can use it. I can also pull the access token. I only use the ID token flow, so I didn't ask for an access token here, but I could ask for it, and I would be able to call my custom APIs as well, just like with any other app. Same way, I could also consume my tokens, so you can also consume B2C tokens with this. And one more beautiful thing about this configuration, which wasn't possible in B2C in past, like I mentioned, and JP also touched it, is that you have to choose a provider if you want to be authenticated, right? If you want to force authentication, and it applies to the entire page. Now, with this configuration, you can choose to exclude some paths from the authentication. So you could make the login page where you choose the provider for authentication could be a publicly facing site. So I just made a path which is called anonymous. So I'll just make it here, anonymous. And I'll make a file here. It has to be absolute path. It doesn't support wildcards, so you can't just whitelist the folder access, which complicates a bit like usage for single page apps, where you have a bunch of JS and CSS files, but it should work. So let's put here, this is anonymous page. All right, and where it was here. If I open this in private, so I don't have any session, close index.html. See that it loaded, so I haven't had to use authentication. But if I go back to the page, it prompts me for sign in. It doesn't show me anything without logging in.
Nice.
So that's the cool way to authenticate this way.
So this is where, so that you say your anonymous page or whatever, that's where you would do your account picker or, you know, whatever logic you wanted to do to let somebody to either pick an account for them or let them choose who their provider is.
Exactly.
Okay, cool.
Or you could set your homepage there so people can see the site, but then when they have to interact with other bits of the site, they have to authenticate. So that's another option. That's great.
Yeah. So
hopefully it will make it into the UI at some point, right? Where we can configure that through the UI. Right? It all starts with a file and an API, and then eventually makes it in the UI. So people have feedback for that. I think will help promote it faster.
Hoping for that, really.
Well, and it enables some new scenarios too, like the ability to host a SPA through a function proxy and the API itself from the same domain, so you can get away from things like CORS issues and whatever. Because I know I've had to do that in the past. Although I don't remember, I seem to remember the way that I had to do it was pretty different. Like I wasn't using a separate authentication provider. But maybe what I was using is even less documented and less preview than what we're looking at here, because now I'm super curious as to the difference between the two.
Yeah, so I think in future, this JSON configuration will replace the app settings, because the app settings are quite messy, and this configuration is well structured. So I really like it, and it gives you a lot of new functionalities which you can use. Yeah. And if you just scroll through the settings, you can also configure the redirect behavior. So what kind of errors it's going to return. You can also specify custom parameters for the OpenID Connect provider. You can specify more scopes. And if you, for example, for some reason don't have an OpenID Connect metadata, you can specify the endpoints on your own as well.
Oh, nice.
So that's what you would use if Apple released the Apple ID sign-in like tomorrow or today, whenever their event is. So you would go with this until they added the discovery endpoint.
Okay, cool.
Right.
Couple more things which can be configured because it's on one page. So you can also specify the logout endpoint. So you can configure the logout address. So once you sign out, what's going to happen? Because usually you want to do single sign out, sign the user from your service, sign the user from the corporate identity, and redirect them to somewhere else, to some homepage or unauthenticated page. So you can do that via this logout endpoint if you need to. What I haven't touched is how EazyAuth stores the tokens, because when I was configuring EazyAuth, there was a checkbox or a switch. Oh, okay, so not this one. there is a switch to enable the token store. The token store actually stores the tokens for the users. So you can then make use of that, of the tokens, for example, when the user is not authenticated. By default, the tokens are stored in the app service file system. So it's stored here in this data.auth tokens file. And here you can see that there is the encrypted value of the token. So this is the refresh token and some identity info. And you can basically make use of that for refreshing the token or not using the API interactively. So when you want to do it behind the scenes.
That was very nice. And something new that I know that most of our viewers will probably not have had the opportunity to play with or see it in action. So thank you, Jan, for doing this. I mean, I've learned quite a few things today.
So thanks to this, what we have as well is we can basically use the API, or we can use the tokens non-interactively. So imagine you have a service which, for example, has to do something behind the scenes when the user is not using the app. You can basically take the user's token, you can request an access token thanks to it, and call another API. So it allows for all of these services because you have the token store there with all the tokens available. And now I would like to go a little bit experimental into the EazyAuth running it locally. How to do that?
Oh yeah.
All right. So.
Hey, before you do that, let's take a really short break, maybe 3 minutes this time,
okay.
And then we'll and that way we'll jump back into the experimental side, which sounds like a lot of fun. So yeah, let's
even more experimental than before, right? That's something to notice. We already played with some preview bits. Let's play with undocumented, I suppose, or
yeah.
Nice.
Yeah, so let's take a quick break, and we will be back in, I don't know, about 12:15 at the latest. See you in a few.
Yes. How can I not be?
Welcome back. We're back. We're on the home stretch, and now we're getting into the fun stuff that you can't find anywhere, except for Jan's blog.
Also, things that you might not want to do. Like, it's nice to know that you can do them, but sometimes you have to break a few things to make them happen, and it's a bit hacky. So take it with a bit of salt. And let's go and see what Jan has for us.
Right. So we talked about EazyAuth. I also showcase the way that you can use Visual Studio and middleware, which lets you to mock the settings of EazyAuth or mock the attributes. But let's take a look at running the full EazyAuth thing locally, the same way App Service on Linux does it. So I'll go a little bit, it takes just a very short detour on the app service middleware, because this is actually where I found the EazyAuth. This is the real deal container, which is used as in the ambassador pattern or as the sidecar, and you can find it on the Docker Hub under the app service team. So it's publicly available image. You can find a bunch of other sample images, for example, for the runtime containers for app service and for Kudu and others. And this one, the app service middleware, is the one we are looking for. I already downloaded that image, so I have my Docker running here with the image already pulled. And all we have to do is to actually start the image. Now, what app service does and how it works is it's using these environment variables. So if I switch to environment in Kudu, I'll be able to see all the environment variables that I have here available in the app and also in the container, which actually uses that for configuration. So you see that we have the client secret, we have the client ID, we have the whether the auth is enabled, this is actually the site where we have the JSON file, so there'll be just very few configuration properties. But if we take the real deal site with Kudu, you'll find much more environment variables here, which actually tell and set the behavior of EazyAuth. So you see that there is the logout path. We're telling that the default provider is Azure AD. We have the client ID, the audiences, and other settings. So what I did was I basically took that container and passed it all the app settings that were here, and it started to work more or less.
Nice.
It was very.
I
simple.
like it. Copy paste settings works.
Yeah. So I'll pull up my terminal here. It's the Windows terminal. It allows you to interact with bunch of shells. So I can use PowerShell. I can use Ubuntu. So on this machine, I'm using WSL2. So I'm running Linux on Windows. Please? Yes, of course. Okay. Wait, I can zoom.
You can, man.
Yeah. Let's do
Windows
this.
Plus, right?
I'm doing Control Scroll, so it's actually doing that. And I'll just paste the command, and I'll explain it a little bit because the command is quite long. I tried to format it, but then it took multiple lines, and it was rather. I'm not sure whether it was better that way or this way, but all basically you have to do is you have to tell it, all right, Docker, start my container, expose some port, give it some name.
And I assume the port is hard-coded, right? So it has to be at 8081 for things to work.
Yeah, this is basically the port that is exposed on my machine. So when I hit this port on my machine, it will go through the app service middleware, through the EazyAuth.
Nice.
Then I have bunch of configurations. So I tell it what the site name is, that I enable the auth. It has to be, this parameter has to be there. It pretty much says where you are actually running. I give it the host name again, the instance ID, because it uses these to actually look up the application running for you. I also enable logging, which is quite useful when you're troubleshooting. I'll get to that a bit later. I pass it the audiences. So this is the configuration for the AAD. I give it the client ID, client secret. I tell it to authenticate with Azure AD. And here's the two things which need to be passed is the encryption key and the signing key. Now, the encryption key is used to encrypt the data in the token store. The signing key is used to sign the tokens which are used by EazyAuth behind the scenes. So I pass it all these parameters, and the last
are these values well known, so anybody can get them?
Yeah, so you can generate them. They're 32-byte encoded hex strings, I think. And what I did, I didn't generate them. I created an app service. I let app service generate it for me.
And then you copy them from there.
And I copy them. Yeah.
Fantastic. Okay. So because people were like, where did he get these values from, right?
Yeah. So it's just 32-byte value, which is encoded. But like I said, the easiest way is just to pull it from here and ditch the site if you want to run it locally.
And now, is there any requirement that it be exposed on 8081, or is it just that you need to be, or is it just that you whatever this container port is mapped to locally, you need to make sure your configuration reflects that? Because I guess I'm wondering, like, how does this interact with your app? Like, do I in the app know that this exists and so I call it?
Yeah. So the app setting where the app is running is configured here. So I tell it where the destination of the app is. Okay. So this is local address of my PC. So in my local network, and port 7071 is used for Azure Functions, local debugging. So I'll be using it with Azure Functions. And this exposed port is basically on your machine, when I hit the browser, port 8081, I want to reach this container, which will then pass the request to my Azure Functions.
But is there any requirement that it be 8081 to make the interaction work?
You can make it.
Okay.
You can make.
But it's 8081 in the container, but you can expose it however you need to.
You can also expose. I think you can set any port because it will actually pull the first port which is being exposed.
Right. Yeah. Okay.
All right. So I'll just go ahead and start the container. It should be fairly quick.
Unless there was an update and now it goes and downloads the image.
Yeah. So, okay, we got the container running. And what I need to do is I'll start my Azure function. So I created here an EazyAuth function. I'll just start it. It's a C# function which triggers on HTTP. And it pulls the name from the header so that we see that we really get the info from EazyAuth, right? This is the well-known header for the username which we get. So here we go. I'll open my browser, navigate to localhost 8081, and we got the app running. So the container's working, and I need to specify the endpoint for that function to trigger. So you see that it pulled the info from the token, from the not from the token, from the header. So this is
you didn't have to authenticate here. How did that work?
Because SSO. So if I open it in private, it will actually prompt me to authenticate via Azure AD.
Right. Okay.
So this is SSO. This is how it should work, right? You don't even know that you were authenticated, but you were.
Yep.
But just to show it for real, I can just go ahead with my mail in.
I didn't doubt that it was for real. I'm just saying I found it that it worked very quickly. So I was like, oh, that's nice. So you're already logged in.
One cool thing about authentication: go passwordless whenever you can. Just when your fingerprint works. Oh, then. Right. Something went wrong. Oh, right. So passwordless. This is actually a Azure AD specific thing. I'm not accessing my home tenant, so passwordless will not work here.
Yes.
So I have to actually put my password in. I don't think that even a YubiKey would work because it's not registered in the tenant. So let's. I can just go with my password, which I don't remember, just like you were mentioning, because of
Bitwarden, my friend. That's how you do it.
Yeah.
You shouldn't remember it. That's the key. If you remember your password, then you're not doing it right.
So
ask JP and his 90 character long passwords.
So I'll just copy paste my password from the password manager if I can find it. Right, here we go. Let's put it in. And
so
now I'm in.
So run this one more time for me. So this is here. So
right.
You are connecting to the EazyAuth container. Is the EazyAuth container actually proxying back to your actual app?
Yeah, it's
okay.
It's proxying to my Azure function. So here in the Docker, I got the middleware container running.
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
I can even access it. We got the CLI. So we know that this is the real deal container. I should have the home. Okay.
You might want to come out of Zoom and then zoom into the actual command. Or can you zoom the command?
Yeah.
You can zoom the command.
I'll just ls the directory. It's whenever I hit enter, it actually moves away for some reason. So you see that I have the data folder. In that data folder, it's moving away.
Well, don't hit the enter. Just gently tap it.
No, even when I type it moves away when I type, and I'm not even.
That was a bad joke. Like it's running away because you're hitting it.
Hitting the enter key.
Yeah, like a
a typewriter. It does kind of feel like a typewriter.
Yeah.
hitting the enter key like
That's exactly the same.
hitting the enter key like it owes you money.
So
Well, that's super cool because I guess I hadn't really thought, but yeah, like if you're going to have headers injected, then it would have to proxy back. So then, so that raises some other interesting questions too. Like, what are, like when I'm in app service running, I've got essentially two containers. I've got the EazyAuth container and I've got my app container. And do they scale in tandem? Do we know? I mean, do we know if like, am I getting for every instance of the container that needs to run? That my app scales out to, is the EazyAuth container scaling too? Because if it's proxying it, I would imagine it would have to.
It does. So when you scale on the app service plan, so you add another instance, Microsoft goes ahead and provisions another EasyAuth container on that new instance for you.
Yeah. It actually copies the infrastructure and copies it to multiple VMs. So if you say I want 10 more instances of this, you actually get 10 more app service plans behind the scenes, so you don't see it. So I would assume that it does the same. That's why it's very important that if you are thinking about scaling out, then you create your apps and build your apps in a way that it can scale. Like you don't have local caching, you don't have session caching is distributed and what have you. Very important. I think EasyAuth falls into that category. You need to make sure that, well, you don't need to because it happens automatically for you, I assume, but it's good to know.
So by default, when talking about scaling, EasyAuth stores the files in the file system of app service, which is portable and is basically distributed into all instances. So any instance which reads from it gets the latest data. But if you wanted to scale independent, you can set the EasyAuth to store the tokens to the token store in blob storage. So you can tell it via configuration, via an app setting, to actually use the blob storage for the JSON files with tokens, so that it will not be dependent on the file system.
Yeah, you should never be dependent on the file system if you are doing horizontal scaling. Now, the other question was, and I forgot about it.
Well, now, app service does handle synchronizing the app service file system for you. So the files in your app, for example. So like if you're writing a file or if you're reading a file that's part of your deployment, or even if you add it later on, if it's added to the specific part of the file system that represents the app, that is synchronized across all instances.
It is. Along with the token store data, the thing is, the app service file system is quite slow.
Right.
Like it's a bottleneck for the performance. So you want to avoid it. If you're really planning to go big, you want to avoid that even with EasyAuth, because that will bring some performance thing.
I remember what I wanted to say. You have the affinity cookie there. I noticed that when you were looking at your browser in the cookies, you also have the affinity cookie, which means that you have sticky sessions with your apps, right? So users should not be affected by your scaling because they will always be pointing to the same instance that they originally access.
Exactly. But the issue with affinity is when if you want to ever downscale and you have affinity enabled, you won't be able to. Because there's no way to tell which users actually still want to access the instance which you want to remove, right?
Yeah, I mean, we tell everybody to turn off Affinity, right? I mean, Affinity is there. I think Affinity is largely there for legacy purposes, for apps that are still using, in-memory session and things like that, where you kind of need to be sticky for a while, because it's just, you end up losing all the advantage of scale, because you've got a much coarser scale slider now, by virtue of the fact that you may still end up hot with overloaded instances because you've got sticky sessions, even though you've got 3 instances available, right? Yeah. So we advise people to turn off sticky or affinity if they can. Which hopefully, if you're going to all the trouble to build a new app, you can get to a point where you don't need affinity.
Well, it's the first step to moving to the cloud, right? I have a web app running somewhere on-prem, and I need to move to the cloud because my manager said so, or we're moving to the cloud. And you don't want to break the legacy app. You don't have enough time to do it. Well, I jumped into a customer one ones that they're like, oh, we have 1 month to move all our VMs to Azure because our data center is closing down. I'm like, okay, that's going to be interesting. How many VMs? And like they had thousands of VMs. They didn't even know how many web apps that were running on there or what kind of workloads. So that was a fun exercise. But if you are in that kind of sticky situation, you create gold images for all your VMs. You stick them into Azure very quickly. You do the same for your web apps, and then you start working backwards to see what you can fix, what you can rewrite, what you can modernize, what you can take away and shut down. But having this kind of backwards compatibility is nice when you are starting with the cloud because it gives you that kind of warm feeling of, I know how things work. Now I can learn the new way. And yeah, well, I mean, ideally you don't want to use authentic cookies, but if you have to, it's there for you to use.
Yeah. So there's an interesting question too, which I wanted to ask you, Jan, which is if you were working with a customer today, for example, on either something new or maybe something relatively recent, like obviously if it's a super old app and it's going to take a bunch of work, that's a different story. But, do you think when you're doing an implementation, do you prefer to use EazyAuth if it's available, or do you still sort of fall back to doing it on your own in code? Where do you land normally?
So it depends on what I need to do. If I need to call a bunch of APIs, I need to, and I also care about the refreshing tokens. I need to do a lot of like advanced scope stuff and authorization on the API side. So we primarily try to build APIs, right? Mm-hmm. And then have some single page apps or Blazor, call it from the browser, from the client side. So I usually go with the full scale implementation of Microsoft's identity. So using the Microsoft Identity Web lately, or just MSAL and OpenID Connect middleware to achieve it, because it gives me much more possibilities. Control? Yeah, much more control over the API. So for instance, we do a lot of authorization stuff, which is built on top of database, and we have to count in some roles and complex permissions. So this is something that we still have to code, and using the full scale implementation isn't really big overhead on top of that. So not really using EazyAuth on big projects. However, when I do something small, and I will show that a little bit later as the last demo, which I have, is how you can actually connect it with Azure Logic apps to actually authenticate them very, very easily with EazyAuth, and protect them and build your small APIs like that.
Cool.
Nice.
Yeah, like I think it seems like it's come a long way too, especially in the last few years, and now it really can't. I mean, especially for smaller apps, like if I'm building a line of business app, for example, and making maybe a couple of API calls, but just need to authenticate users and get them in. I mean, it seems like this is a pretty short path to doing that. And especially if I'm migrating something that maybe uses Windows Auth on-prem, Kerberos and AD on-prem, and I need to get that up into the cloud as quickly as possible. This seems sort of like a slam dunk for getting it up there quickly without having to make a whole lot of code changes, if any.
Yeah. And one more argument for using EazyAuth is like, if you're deciding whether implementing local accounts in your app directly or using, some EazyAuth, give the users ability to use single sign-on, whether it's Azure AD, Facebook, Microsoft account. Just give them the ability. Don't manage your accounts. Don't manage your own accounts, right?
Never manage your own accounts.
Exactly.
There's no way out, but we say it over and over again, where people asking like, how do I, create a user database, and how do I connect it? How do I protect it? Don't. Just give it to somebody else and move on with the other tasks rather than spending 2 months trying to implement your own or roll out your own identity system.
Yeah, 100% on board with that. And even if ASP.NET Core does a very good way of protecting passwords and scaffolding everything for you, just you shouldn't really do it, because people already have their accounts they want to use for single sign-on, right? Yeah. Whether it may be the social ones or the corporate ones. So no point in doing that. And all right, I'll just put a breakpoint here back to the code, and just for a moment, I'll just refresh the page. So we hit the breakpoint, and we can take a look at the headers. And I will zoom in once I expand it, so that my screen doesn't start acting like a typewriter again. Okay, now it disappeared. So basically, in the headers, I have all the fields coming from Azure AD. So you can find the access tokens, refresh tokens, ID tokens, pretty much everything you're used to. And thanks to it, you can use all of that in Azure Functions. So this is running it locally. You can also run it along with your full-scale ASP.NET Core, right? So if I were to switch this, turn it off, and I will just switch back to my EazyAuth to the ASP.NET Core side, which we were showcasing with the local development. And I'll just comment the lines which actually use the mock file and start it on the right port. So I'll just go to the settings and tell it to run on, I think, this will have issue because I had the HSTS enabled, so I'll need to disable that as well. 7071, because the container is not set to proxy via HTTPS, and I haven't figured out how to do it, so I'll just disable the HSTS and the HTTPS redirection, just to make sure that we don't run into it. And if
Janisku is saying, EazyAuth, all the things, going for security and identity is always a great way. Yeah, man, it is.
Yeah. So let's wait for it to run.
So do you think it's a container configuration thing that we need to fix in order to work with HTTPS, or?
I'm not sure whether the proxy is enabled to work with the HTTPS, whether it's possible with the container. I think what I've been doing, I described it in my blog post. I didn't go too deep because in the container there, I actually unpacked the Docker container with EazyAuth. I opened LSpy, and there was a license file which said you can't do this. So I can't talk about this really, probably, but anyone can go ahead and try it on their own. It's on my blog post how to do it. So I opened the site, and it said for a 1 error because I'm not authenticated. I'm requiring authentication here. So if I open it via the container, I'm getting 500, and it probably didn't hit my code. Let's see. Oh, right. So it's not presenting the MS client principal for some reason to that
to your middleware, right?
Yeah,
which expects
to that page for some reason. Maybe it's missing, or it could be the container version, because I'm using an older container which has been released. Let's see. It's an older build. There is actually a newer one, and I haven't tested it with that one. So I may go and update my blog post once I figure that out. Actually, never tried it with this ASP.NET Core code, but they're apparently trying to pull the JSON encoded JSON file, or the header, and trying to pull the information from there, but it's not present for some reason. The middleware container is not injecting it to the request. I'm not really sure why, and we'll probably need to look deeper into that. So this didn't work. And let's move away from this Docker and running locally to the last demo, which contains or combines using Azure Functions proxies, which are great functionality if you want to make some nice addresses and endpoints in your app, or want to just unify bunch of endpoints from various applications, or use it as a coarse proxy. And along with logic apps, which are the low-code platform which allow you to visually create sort of applications or endpoints or some logic behind the scenes. So I'll just move to that. I'll stop the VS and move back to the Azure portal, which we have here. I'll create a new function for this, because I just want to start clean, not to have anything with us. I'll have the 425 show function. All right, I'll give it the .NET Core, but we're not going to write any code in this demo. So we'll just be clicking and writing out logic that way, which is very nice. So you don't have to know how to code to use EazyAuth.
Citizen devs.
Citizen
That's
developers.
what they're called. Although yesterday I heard the new term. It's called fusion devs.
Fusion
Has anybody
devs.
heard about that term before? Where you combine pro devs and citizen devs into a new hybrid model, which is called fusion devs. I was like,
Wow.
yeah, we're inventing new terms here. Like, you're still a developer at heart, right? And once you go past the very thin layer on top of Power Apps or Logic Apps or whatever, you are actually writing code. We've done it with JP the other day, and you're like, if you're not a developer, you're not building this one, even with Logic Apps. So interesting that they've come up with a new term called fusion apps. There's a whole new, I think, conference and initiative now at Microsoft about fusion developers. So
Wow.
yeah,
That's the future, right?
you can be a fusion MVP. How about that?
Absolutely. And I just noticed I didn't create a function, so I have to do it again. Apologies, I created a web app. It's a force of habit. So let's do it real quick again. GJ 25 show. Why? All right. .NET Core 3.1 West Europe. I'll just choose the storage account and app service plan, the one I created. Again, turn off app insights. Create it. And what we will do is we will enable EazyAuth on the Azure function so that we will have the authentication available. And we will write some logic app, very simple one, which we'll probably post to Twitter or something, because I also want to showcase the benefits of logic apps. If you haven't heard about them, it's a integration platform. Microsoft has over 400 connectors, which you can use from within logic apps. So for instance, if you wanted to make a Twitter post, you would have to go and authenticate to Twitter, get an access token, find the right endpoint, which to call via the API, and then figure out how to compose the body of the post and then send it. With logic apps, you can just do it in a very, very easy way. So we'll combine these two and provide an authenticated endpoint to post to Twitter.
Nice.
So here I got my function. First thing first, I'll enable EazyAuth here. So
Can
again,
I remind you to zoom in a little bit? The usual request.
First.
Oh.
So
Nice.
I'll enable the EazyAuth again with Azure AD. I'll save it.
You got a lot of cleanup to do after this one. A bunch of service principals, operating stations, user groups, resource groups.
I'm prefixing them, all of them, in mostly the right way. So I just run a PowerShell script to pull all the service principals and delete them.
There you go.
Which is actually very, very nice and easy way to clean it up. And also that's why I'm using a separate tenant, not the production one, because deleting can sometimes go very wrong.
Yeah.
It actually happened to me once. I've been deleting something in Azure. It was the old portal. They didn't have to confirm. It was just yes, no. I was just deleting. I was so confident that what I was deleting, and I deleted some of my production backups, like my personal files.
Well, at least it was backups, right? I mean, it's not the best, but you can create a backup on the fly if you have confidence in the process. But I had a customer that deleted their production database because they thought they were in the test tenant or the test portal or the test account, and we had to contact support for them to restore it. Luckily, most of the resources that you delete are retained for a certain amount of time. So if you contact support straight away, they will be able to restore it. But it took about a week to get the data back.
Wow.
Yeah. So be careful. Also, that's why you have resource locks, right?
Exactly.
If you have some very important things, make sure you put locks on them because PowerShell can be super powerful and super unforgiving.
Exactly. So I'll just create my function, my logic app here for when you show Twitter post. I'll give it to West Europe. I'll just have it created. So what's actually happening behind the scenes is that there is just a logic app is a definition. So it's a JSON file, which then gets interpreted by the worker roles on Microsoft side, and they execute it step by step. So my trigger is going to be HTTP, since I'm going to come from Azure Function Proxy, but I could be coming from Service Bus or some other trigger. And once I save the logic app, it will generate me the address, the unique address, which I can call. Now, this address is also signed, so it contains a signature of the so that the request can be called only via this address, so it's unique. So I'll take this. I will put it into the Azure function. So this is probably the portal. I'll close some of my tabs. Too many of them. All right, and I'll create a function proxy. Now this proxy is just a HTTP proxy. It allows you to do a lot of manipulation with the request. So I'll just call it the logic app. You can give it some route template. So I can have it just /logic app. Can enable specific methods. So get. I'll pass the backend URL. And one more thing which I have to do is I have to override the header, because logic apps they won't authenticate you via the address when the header contains the authorization information. So you have to override the authorization header, and the only thing you have to do is just call it like this, just authorization, and leave it empty. This should do the job for you.
It just passes it through.
It just removes the header from the request.
Okay.
When it's empty. I hope this will work. Otherwise, I'll have to check another logic app which I created. So I got this. So this should create a proxy for me. But all right, it's here. But I still won't be able to trigger it because the logic app is actually listening on post. So I'll change the method to get, so that I can just get it nicely from the browser. And all I have to do is add the Twitter action. So you see that Microsoft has a bunch of connectors. And you can also execute custom code in JavaScript to do some advanced operations with the data if needed. But I'll just choose Twitter, and let's say I want to post a tweet. So there's an action, post a tweet. Now it's prompting me to, and I have no idea what's happening behind the scenes, whether there's some authentication, some tokens, no idea. Okay. Twitter's asking for password, so let's give it one. Okay, now MFA code. Use MFA everywhere. And let's authorize the app. All right. So now I have authenticated the Twitter connector, and I can just tell it the body of the tweet. So let's say, hello to the 425 show. So this will basically execute and post a tweet on my wall. And what I can end it with is just pass it the response back to the browser and say hello world, so that we know that the logic app really executed. So I'll save it. And now if I go ahead and hit the function, first thing that happens is EazyAuth.
Mm-hmm.
I give consent again because it's a new app. And I got back response from the logic app, hello world. So if I open up a Twitter, I should have some post there. And it's here, 10 seconds ago.
Oh man, you didn't use the hashtag.
Oh, all right, let's fix it. Let's post it again.
You can
What's the hashtag?
Who used to work in marketing?
It's a hashtag 425 show.
All right, let's hello to the 425 show like this. All right, let's do it. Let's do it again. All right, so I just hit F5 and it should be there. And it's there. It's even a hashtag.
Nice.
So
I have to go and like that now.
cool.
Smash,
Oh, that's so funny.
Smash the like button, right? Or gray out or subscribe.
Yeah, we heard
New
somebody
expression.
yesterday. We heard somebody yesterday, like in a YouTube video, say, "Turn that subscribe button gray."
Yeah.
Which I thought was, that's perfect. That's excellent.
It's great.
So.
It's a brand new way of interacting with your audience.
Yeah,
Turn that like red.
yeah, it was pretty wild. So, cool.
All
Yeah,
right.
man, that's fantastic. And believe it or not, you just took us all the way to the end of the show. It was funny because when you came in this morning, I asked you, like, how long do you think it's going to take? You're like, an hour, maybe an hour and a half. And there we are. 3 hours later, with all this awesomeness, Demo, it's been fantastic to see how EazyAuth can enable new scenarios, right?
Yeah.
Well, it's really
It's
cool.
a really cool tech.
It's cool about logic apps too, because if you and I'm sure we've all, at least like I worked in enterprise dev for a long time, and you end up doing 80% maintenance on a bunch of small tools for people, and a lot of those small tools could easily be built by a power user, right? By somebody
Yep.
who could use something like Power Apps, or most of the time they built them in Excel, but whatever. But if you're an enterprise developer, being able to focus on the platforms that make money and just build APIs so that power users can build their own apps. I mean, that's a great story, right? And it keeps you as a developer more interested in money making ventures for your business, rather than just keeping the lights on and managing a tool that is used by 5 people. It might be very important to those 5 people, but in the broad scheme of things, it's something you could delegate and give back to them to build the way they want.
Yeah, most definitely. And thanks to EazyAuth, you can also secure it in a very nice manner.
Yeah. Well, this is awesome. Well, thanks for spending your entire evening or afternoon with us, Jan.
No problem. It's been an honor and pleasure.
I think this has been great. I've learned so much
Definitely.
about the ins and outs of EazyAuth. I'll start using it more now. So.
Yeah, I felt the same, because I was like, I don't know how we can fill 3 hours with EazyAuth, man. I was thinking, we had a backup plan. If you run out of time, or if you finished early, we're going to jump on other things to build. We've got so many ideas, but at the same time, we're learning so many things today. And my personal favorite is running EazyAuth locally. That's fantastic for having that kind of a continuity from developer environment to production without having to assume that things will work. We guarantee that things will work if you turn EazyAuth in production, but if you are going to write code that interacts with the EazyAuth staff, locally is the best way to test it. And I think that was awesome. You don't have to debug live in production like I did. There you go.
Cool.
Now we'll definitely do a recap of everything that we talked today. So we'll put a nice blog post. We'll add the links that were shared through the show, so people can go and have a look. We'll link to Jan's blog as well, and we will definitely see you on Thursday.
Yeah, so Thursday we're going to have some folks from our docs teams here, from our docs team here, and those are people who work in identity with us, and also on docs as a whole, the docs.microsoft.com as a whole.
Yeah.
And they're going to talk to us just about docs, right? Like, of course, people complain about docs all the time. Rightly or wrongly. And these are the people to complain to. I hope they're not watching right now because they're not going to come on with us. But no, they're going to maybe try to peel the curtain back a little bit and just show sort of everything that goes into why we have docs, how we get docs, how docs get bubbled up to new ones, all sorts of different things around how do we go from we've got features or we've got configuration knobs to turning it into a doc that you can go and follow, or a tutorial or a sample. So I think it'll be a lot of fun. It'll be pretty enlightening too, for just to see how just to sort of see more about how that sausage gets made. So but for now,
you stole that line from my mouth. Sausage is made anyway. And if you want to join us, please do join us on Thursday and provide us some constructive feedback and criticism. We want to make things better for you guys. So the people on docs are open to any and all feedback that you have.
So I think we're gonna. It looks like C# Fritz. Looks like Jeff is running. Doesn't really look. We don't have any of our other main channels online right now. So I guess we'll all go. Let's go right over to. Let's go over to Mr. Fritz, and we'll see everybody next week. See ya, or later this week. See ya.
Thanks, everyone. See ya.